And we are, there's nobody online at the moment. I'm gonna check to make sure we're okay.
So if I want to make sure that
I'll take
I
care of it.
repeat questions or anything like that, you'll let me.
Yes, yes. Okay. And your spotlight, all right, welcome, everybody. Maud, to another fabulous nutrition program with Maudene. You are fabulous. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt.
Okay, let's do that.
All right, we're just gonna assume it's gonna be great,
Okay,
you know, and the setting the bar high, no pressure.
no pressure.
Okay, so, I will leave it to you.
Here I am. Hi.
Welcome back.
Thank you. So Barbara said we just want something very basic. We want the fundamentals of macros. And I couldn't make it basic. I just couldn't. So I hope you don't mind. We're gonna do a little bit of teasing with it. And the theme is, or should I say the flavor is kind of if you're trying to lose weight. So this isn't about everyday healthy eating, although that's implied all the time. But if you have some designs on how to alter your calories and your food and your eating behavior to help knock some pounds off, that I can relate to. So here we go. The first I thought I would do is do a couple of quick review. Okay, I wasn't sure why that little thing. So we started, I did a presentation a month ago, about the best diet for me. And this one was coming from there where,
Is it in here? So can I go tell them to move the words?
or maybe they'll come and ask me. Goes both ways. I mean, it might be a phone call. Yeah. So remember, I don't like the word diet. Diet is a 4-letter word. I do let a few 4-letter words leave my tongue now and then, but diet, I really try not to say. So when I think of diet, I'm talking about the choices that we make when we order food, when we prepare a menu, when we sit to the table, the selections that could be ethnically unique or the things that are comfort foods, that kind of thing. What do we include? What do we limit? Are we including or limiting something because of a health concern like high cholesterol or high blood pressure or allergies? And then I tried to think of some more silly things that have to do with diet, like get my grove on. Anybody have any other silly or romantic or other phrases that have to do with now I'm about to eat? If you think of some, please feel free to share them.
Lately, I've been getting
Don't
walking
walk
out of the way.
Gout.
Gout.
Oh,
Yeah.
this is cold.
And they say it also has to do with the food
Mhm.
that you eat.
Yeah, it's, there are dietary targets for keeping the uric acid levels out of your food so that it doesn't raise uric acid in your blood. Sometimes it works great for some people and sometimes it doesn't matter. And then there's some foods that used to be considered high uric acid that you should never touch, like beans and certain vegetables. And now better research shows that you can eat those foods without necessarily triggering a gout attack. So, yes. And then it's like, remember that this is a little off the topic, but gout used to be called, it's thought of as a condition of people who were very affluent. So if you could afford wine and cheese and lots of venison and beef, you know, and seafood and not just eat poor people's food, you would get gout because poor people never got it. But it turns out everybody can get it. And if you push it, you can get it faster, but sometimes there's no way to predict why it's gonna happen. What a pain in the neck, right? But then at least they have, medications for it. Yeah, there's always something. Okay. Next one. So in my quick review, when we're talking about trying to think of a strategy to help lose weight, what kind of selections are we gonna make? We definitely don't wanna disregard the patterns, like do I eat at night? Do I eat all day? I mean, I'm not trying to say one is worse than the other, but it's part of what has to be goes into your decision. Make sure I'm getting some physical activity in every day. what about my sleep? And remember, sleep has to do with, there are hormones that can tell regions of your brain that you've had enough to eat and you can feel like, okay, I'm satisfied, I'll stop now. And those signals have to basically plug in. It's kind of like putting, when you're charging your phone and you have to put the port in. If you're sleep deprived, the port won't fit. In other words, the connection isn't being made. You're making the hormone and you've got the machinery, but the receptor site doesn't work. And that's, how about, is that weird? I mean, is that wonderfully crazy weird? So, very important to get good quality and quantity of sleep. Stress, well. Next. There are weight gain promoting medications, and then there's the colonies of critters that live in your large intestines. And some of them, and it's hard to nail who's who, but some people are easy gainers because of the colonies that live in their intestines, their large intestines, and some don't. And one of the examples of that was, and I think I mentioned this also the last time I spoke, if you happen to be unfortunate enough to be in the hospital with infections and you get repeated antibiotics, you actually can develop an infection that can't be treated anymore, called C. difficile or called C. diff. And you could be so severely dehydrated from constant diarrhea that you're just as far from death. And the most, I don't know if I should say most, but a fabulously useful way to fix you is to introduce somebody else's poop into your backside. Okay, I said that the most gross way possible. It's called a fecal microbial transplant.
It's like urine too, Matt.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it saves lives.
Yeah, really.
Now, you don't just, it isn't as direct as I mentioned. I mean, there is a procedure for
Yeah.
making sure the donor is healthy
Yeah.
and everything's sterilized, you don't bring anything bad in.
Yeah.
And you can do it with pills or you can do it with an enema, and it saves lives.
Yeah.
So one woman who had been thin all of her life got a fecal microbial transplant. The donor was a woman who had a little more girth.
Mhm.
And after 6 months after her fecal microbial transplant, she had put on 40 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
She didn't, and according to the case history, she didn't change any of her patterns any dramatically.
Mhm.
So something about the critters can make us more efficient with our
Yeah,
calories.
you have like cataracts, you have like parasites that are in your body at that point, you get a cataracts anytime.
Mm,
You know
That
what I'm
doesn't
saying?
sound like fun either.
No, don't, yeah.
So, the very last one, the microbiota, we just definitely want to appreciate that. Little sip of water never hurt. Okay, next one. And the last of our review. Our goals are, in the theme of trying to lose weight, that we want our energy intake, in other words, all the food, the calories of what we eat, to be ever so slightly lower than our energy expenditure, which doesn't mean starve yourself and it doesn't mean try to work out constantly and walk 15 miles a day, because that's just gonna give us sore knees and sore ankles and very bad attitudes. Okay, so here's where I said, let's talk about the basics of macros. And when I define macro, I'm defining it as a macronutrient. So as a dietitian, the word macronutrient has an official definition. It means it is a nutrient that your body uses in the quantities that are measured in grams. And a micronutrient is measured in milligrams. That was exciting. Yeah, okay. So if I said, how much protein should you eat a day? And I have this coming up later. You should eat probably 35 to 70 grams of protein at a meal. And if I said, how much vitamin C should you eat every day? Then it's about 80 milligrams. So that's why there's the micronutrients and the macros. Are we good? Okay. So the macros are unqualifiably fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. And I was looking along Google Images for examples of pictures. And I thought if I were drawing pictures, I wouldn't have been able to do much better. So the carbs are showing, things made out of wheat and bulky, stuff, fun food. Fats include, and I'm gonna come back and detail some more, oils and nuts and seeds and the fat of butter. Minerals are not broccoli. Minerals are metals. They're basically, if I were to take an old fashioned radiator and shave it, and I had little bits of dust in my hand, it's iron. If you remember your old iron skillets, I still have, I use mine daily almost. That's iron. So there's iron in these foods, but those foods are themselves not minerals. So I said, if I were replacing that picture, I would put a skillet and a seashell to represent calcium, and a rock to represent zinc, etc. So then the other micronutrients are vitamins and minerals, and then there's water. Okay. So we're going to talk about each of these. And just before I go on, I remember the definition of nutrient is something that has to be in your diet or in your food intake, or else you die. Okay, it's not that quick usually, but if you don't have protein for a period of time, it could be months, you will die. Your organs will stop functioning. One organ will stop functioning, then another, then another. So like our blood is made up, we hear about all kinds of stuff circulating in our blood, our cholesterol and blood sugar. But blood is basically watery, right? And there are proteins that keep the blood from leaking out of the blood vessels. It provides what, if you were at a gas station, they would say the viscosity. Like it sounds like oil. So those are proteins, and if you don't have enough protein in your diet, you won't have those proteins enough of those proteins in your blood. And that causes your the blood to leak through, and you get watery sort of pooling in your body, and that can't live long. Have you ever remember pictures of really sad pictures of starving children?
Yeah.
And they have sort of a droopy, full-bodied chin, and their bellies are popping down here, and their ankles are full. It's because they don't have enough protein for their liver to synthesize the protein that goes in the blood to hold the blood in circulation, and so they have this called interstitial fluid edema. Can be reversed, but that's a visual way you can see. And protein, of course, I'm going to talk about that right now. Here we go. Let's talk about fat first. Okay, so first one is fat as a macronutrient. It provides energy, lots of calories, 9 calories per gram. What's a gram and what is 9 calories? We can fool with that later if you'd like, but it's the highest, most dense source of calories. So your thought should be, maybe I should limit my fat when I'm trying to lose weight. But you don't have to limit fat. In fact, fat-free diets may not be any better or any more useful than diets with ample fat. It also helps to absorb fat-soluble vitamins. So a fat-soluble vitamin is vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K. And when you have vitamin A, which is very obvious in what's that vegetable that we all think of as eyesight? What's up, Doc?
Carrots.
Yeah, that's vitamin A, called beta carotene. You absorb more of your vitamin A in the presence of fat. So you might say if you boil the carrots, you don't get as much vitamin A out as if you might have if you had had it with olive oil or butter or something. It doesn't mean a half a stick. No one was going there, okay. Okay, so helps absorb fat-soluble vitamins. That means it's really essential. It's a nutrient. A nutrient by definition, if you don't get enough of it inside of a certain length of time, some organ will fail and it could lead to death. And so believe it or not, we have to have fat. If you went on 0 fat, you're not gonna make 6 months. There we go. It won't happen in the Western world now because we get lots of fat. Okay. Another macronutrient, carbohydrate. This is our favorite. Starches and sugars. And by starches and sugars, when I was growing up, and what we learned in home ec was that every plate should have a vegetable, a starch, and a protein, didn't we?
Yes.
Unless you had a much more elegant, interesting dietary pattern. And the starch was usually a potato or rice or pasta or something like that.
Yeah.
So we still have the same goal that carbohydrate should be on your plate at every meal. And what those starches are could be the starch of potato or the starch of wheat or the starch of corn or rice or the starch that's in lots of different things have a little bit of starch and lots of things have a lot. Provides energy, tastes good. Then the next macronutrient. Protein. So protein is made up of what are called amino acids. And my way of remembering amino acids was if I had a chain of pearls, I should say a strand of pearls. Let's suppose the strand has 150 pearls. And there are 22 different ones and they're all in different sequence. That could be a specific protein. And it gets much more interesting in that some proteins, if you're still imagining a strand of pearls, could be 800,000 pearls long. And some proteins twist, and some proteins are straight, and some proteins are very branched. So blah, blah, blah. Amino acids are the building blocks of protein, and the amino acids are the pearls, and the protein is the strand making the necklace. So far, so good? And we use it, I like to think of protein as like the brick. When you're going to build something, the bricks are the foundation and the rest of it. And the cement in between, that's your vitamin C and some other stuff. So it builds. So I have an example here. Things like muscles, hair, nails, made of protein. And then the other materials such as hormones and enzymes are also made of protein. So protein is a biggie. But we don't need as much as most of us, maybe our group today, we're not like, I don't need a side of beef. But we all know people who would eat a half a plate of steak, right, and call it normal, but it does provide about 4 calories per gram, so it's less than fat. And when we eat more protein than we really need, the body just uses it for calories. It just breaks it down and turns it into a source of something that can be burned off for fuel. So any questions so far?
That,
Ready.
I'm sorry,
No,
about how much protein, did you mention before, per meal?
here comes. I think it's
Oh.
the next one. Good timing. I didn't really pay her, but I will next time. Okay, actually, it's coming up soon. Here. Oh, too far. I forgot how to go backwards. There. So the recommended amount of protein is somewhere between 35 and 70 grams per meal. This is a recommendation for seniors
Per meal?
per meal. So let's take it apart and say, am I eating 35 per meal? Now, I'm not gonna swear that every single healthcare professional in the world agrees with 35 to 70 per meal. But it has been recently promoted in medical, updates.
Wow.
So if a deck of cards is roughly the size of a 3-ounce portion, everybody knows a deck of cards. We got some decks here. I've seen some of you sharks at it, yeah? Okay. So would a deck of cards at lunch look like a nice amount? I think today's fish, was it? It was about a deck of cards. Okay, now, so if you're going for 35 to 70, by the way, the reasoning behind 35 to 70, because it's not just random. If I could remember it, I could explain it. When you don't have enough protein, your body will break down proteins in your muscles and use those for other things. And there are some other kind of on-off switches. So you have to find the sweet spot where you're still making new protein and not breaking down. But then if you have too much protein or more than a certain amount, that also can turn other pathways around. So the 35 to 70. So this would give you, I mean, you're already 2/3 of the way to your 35. How we doing? Okay, all right, let's put some more food on the plate and the meal. Okay, so you had an 8-ounce container of milk at lunch. That's another 8 grams. Milk is a nice, easy one to know how much protein. 1 ounce of milk, 1 gram of protein. 16 ounces of milk, 16 grams. Since I know these are 8-ounce containers, so we're gonna take the 21 from the other side. Plus the milk is 8, makes that 29. You're really close to the 35, right? So it isn't so crazy. 70 might be harder to get to, but then some days you'll eat bigger meals and some days smaller meals. Okay. If we had potatoes, today the starch was.
It was a sweet potato.
Sweet potato, okay. So in a half a cup of sweet potato, you're gonna get at least 3. And that's about a half a cup. Here's my anatomical half a cup. Ready? I'm not gonna do a fecal microbial transplant. Here we go. So you take the palms of your hands and you have the palms touch. Ready? And then you overlap your fingers 90 degrees. Not 89, not 91. And the space in here is a half a cup. Pretty much. Hi, Mark.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just looking for both.
Okay. So that's about 100, I'm so sorry, that's about a half a cup. Now, I don't recommend that you put this in your oatmeal pot and say, oh, that's a half a cup. Something with me, but the oatmeal might be hot. And if it's rice or anything, this is a nice reference point. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's okay. So your palms touch, your fingers are overlapping. So it's not like this. It's a, there you go. Okay, so it's a reference point. So-
Excuse me, there's an exercise that you're supposed to be doing with your hands.
Nice.
Like this, and like this, and like that, and like this. And you have to do your eyes, and this, eyes like that, and eyes like that.
I like that.
Yeah, you have to do.
I wish I could do this one. My shoulders are telling me,
Yeah.
girl, you're gonna embarrass yourself.
Yeah.
You're extreme in pain. So this is a tug on the finger?
And tug on the finger. Okay, last two.
Oh, okay.
Last two.
Okay, everyone got that?
The last two.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right,
And like
Yes.
this, and like that.
well, I could probably tug the fingers.
Yeah, you could probably do that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I had to COVID twice. Because I didn't have enough water in my body. And because a lady came into Hawaii dancing that had the COVID, she should stay home, but you can't tell people to do what they have to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah,
I know.
self-isolating, remember, what was it, like 14 days
Yeah.
in 2020?
I went into a hospital that fact.
Yeah.
My sister came to me every 5 days to see me. I was with a nice black lady. I shared the room with her and I watched the church with her and everything. That's what I do. I can't
14
find.
days.
I have like, say, I had watched church with her and I even watch it on TV nowadays. Sometimes. I go to church sometimes and then I don't go. I used to go to St. Francis of Assisi, but I just felt that they were not being right to me.
Religion is hard to find
it's
your,
hard.
your space.
You know what is, my mother told me, that religion and politics is very hard to live with.
And they shouldn't mix.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and with that. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Sally.
Question about the protein.
Yes, love.
Are we talking complete protein?
Good point, and yes. And her question is, because remember I mentioned those amino acids that are the beads that make up the whole necklace? So some of those beads have to be in our diet, and those are called essential amino acids, and then some of them your body can make. And essential amino acids are found all together in things that come from animals. Because when we eat animals, we're eating their muscles most of the time, right? Chicken wing. We eat cheese, it's not a muscle, but it's still protein. But the essential amino acids in beans and rice and corn and bread may not have all of the necessary ones, but if you put them together, you have now made it a complete protein. So that is called protein complementing, as in not, oh, you look good today, but completing, complementing.
Yeah.
So if a person is concerned that they are eating incomplete proteins, you saying, I just had the beans, but I didn't have the rice, or I just had the peanut butter, but I didn't have the bread. It turns out that you can still synthesize new proteins, even if your incomplete proteins are hours apart. They still come together to make good proteins.
But you have to have between, what is it, 35 and 70 complete protein, amount of complete proteins for the day,
I think I'm gonna soften my answer and say total protein
total protein.
per meal, 35. This is a recommendation that I was looking at a couple of like peer-reviewed, policy type journals. So it wasn't just somebody's blog that said, this is what we all should do, because a lot of that's out there. And the 35 to 70 for older people. So if you have 35 to 70 total protein in midday and then again later, you're probably gonna get all your amino acids and your complete proteins will mingle. So thank you that's a great question. How much protein, if I just walked down the street and someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, how much protein should I eat a day? I would say, you're weird, but I do have your answer. It's your weight in kilograms times 0.8. We don't have a blackboard or a whiteboard, right?
No.
Suppose you weigh 100 kilograms. 0.8 would be 80%. So if a 100 kilogram person should eat 80 grams per day. Okay. I'm trying to translate that into, that would be a 220 pound person. So someone 220 pounds, they're big,
Yeah.
right? They're not a little petite, fragile thing.
Yeah, they'll need that protein.
And it's only 80 grams a day. In other words, remember this recommendation was 35 to 70 per meal. So if the standard is 80 grams per day for somebody 220 pounds, this recommendation is higher than we are accustomed to measuring. And that's why I'm introducing it as relatively new recommendations for older people, because we don't resynthesize our proteins as efficiently. So 35 to 70 per meal. It's higher than the basic recommended dietary allowance. Okay, but if you're eating at least 35 and throughout the day you get a total of 70 for the day, you're good. I can be very confident. Okay, so we got 21 from the animal products. We have 8 from the milk, so that's 29. We got 3 from the potatoes, 30, 31, 32. I'm not good at math in public, okay.
32.
And then we got some string beans, we got another 3. How we did it, and that was not a big meal that you had to shove in your face and feel stuffed and bad. Right? So we also had oranges today.
Yeah.
Not much protein in the orange, but that's okay. The orange is chock full of a ton of good stuff. Okay, I'm gonna go backwards to some other slides because I went forward because I wanted to answer your question right away. Let's go back. We're still talking macros and fundamentals. Don't laugh. Trying to find the right key to hit. Okay, that was early on. We covered carbohydrates. We were on proteins. And so here's where I wanted to take a little time to chat about food, because this is fundamentals. If you want to know where is my carbohydrate, where's my protein, where's my fat, here are some what are called exchange lists that collect them all in a way. So if, excuse me, if I were saying, I'm gonna eat a slice of bread, my slice of bread is gonna have about 15 grams of carb, 3 grams of protein, and precious little fat. If I'm gonna eat 3 cups of popcorn, it's gonna be almost the same as a slice of bread. If I'm gonna have 2.5 squares of graham crackers, it's gonna be about the same as a slice of bread. So they're all called equivalents. or exchanges. So far, so good?
Mhm.
Okay. There's many more things that we could put on there, like, I don't own stock in Quaker, so apple and cinnamon Quaker oatmeal. I just put it there as an example of a food that we've all can see in the grocery store. All right, so I wonder if this one will work. Don't mess, just use the one that's here. So the macros on the starchy foods are not rich in protein, but they have a little bit. Then fruits. So fruits have this list will give you a quantity for about 15 grams of carbohydrate. And you see no protein, no fat. I have been challenged that fruits have protein if you eat the seeds. Anybody here gonna eat the seeds?
You gotta eat everything that you touch, like saying, I think it's exciting, eat the skin of any background.
Well, optional, but
It's up to
if you're
you to
eating
get
fruit.
original. It's like, this is the other thing, sorry, but the priest said you gotta put in people's shoes at one point and see what they're doing.
Well, one of my favorite quotes, when I think about somebody who I think is a total jerk, I don't wanna mention any names with orange hair, I'm not going there, but, cause it's politics and religion are very sensitive. I always say, walk a mile in their shoes,
Yeah, that's supposed to.
before you know what
That's
they're
what he
about
said,
and
yeah.
what you think you know about them.
Yeah,
And that's for everybody,
Oh,
not
yeah.
just,
you have to walk the mile. and
Yeah.
go and-
walk a mile in mine.
And talk the mile.
Well, okay. I'll do mostly
When
listening.
it's you, the ritual, that's.
So one of the things on here I wanna bring to your attention. If there's 15 grams of carbohydrate in a small apple or a small pear or a small orange, that would be something a little smaller than a tennis ball.
Oh, that's tiny.
Yeah. I just wanna give you perspective. So those apples that we normally see in the grocery store, the farmer's market, those like red delicious apples, those are double, those are 30 grams. Okay, now,
I'm gonna go. Yeah.
okay, thank you for your exercise,
Yeah,
okay. Down at the bottom, I noted that 4 teaspoons of sugar or a tablespoon of honey is also the same amount of carbohydrate as a small apple or a small pear or 4.5 inches of banana. So we're talking macros. If you're thinking, I'm never touching sugar, it's got too much carbohydrate, or I'm not eating that, it's all sugar. How would you hesitate to have a 4.5 inch piece of banana? I'm just talking on carbohydrate only, not to say one has potassium, one has fiber, the other doesn't. But I want you to be aware of when you're making a choice about, or when you're making a determination that something is high in sugar or not, just remember these are roughly equivalent for carbohydrate. Definitely not for vitamins and minerals and fiber. Okay, next slide. Again, about macros. Meats. So meats can be looked at as very low fat, medium fat, and high fat. And obviously you can visually tell when a meat is high fat. So pepperoni, bologna, hot dogs, they're high fat. Chicken breast with no skin, low fat. So the designations are basically an ounce of any of those things will have 0 carbohydrate. Let me climb over this wire. 0 carb, 7 grams of protein per ounce. Remember, the Teca cards is a 3 ounce equivalent. And if it's lean, it'll be 0 to 3 grams of fat. Medium fat will have about 5 grams of fat per ounce, and a high fat food will have about 8 grams of fat per ounce. So it doesn't mean bad or good, it's just information. And mostly, if you're selecting a high protein food, it's probably better to get the lower versions of them, the ones which are trimmed of their excess fat, their visible fat. Okay. Veggies. So veggies have a little carb and about 2 grams of protein, and that's based on a half a cup cooked. So this, remember, that's our half a cup. Palms touching, fingers overlapping. And then fats. So fats are good foods. Fats are seeds, nuts, oils, butter. You can render fat. Remember the old days? I mean, my mom definitely saved bacon fat in a can on the stove. Or if you render chicken fat, I've done that. Schmaltz, it's good stuff. Did you have a question?
No.
Okay. Anybody wanna ask any questions about where you can get fat? I mean, it's everywhere, but you can separate it and have less of it, optional less, or have a lot. Okay. So I wanna take this macro business to your plate. And the takeaway is carbohydrates and fats and proteins are all essential to our lives. And when we assemble a plate that we're trying to lose weight, we want to select the most food that has the lowest amount of calories. So that's going to be the foods with the least amount of fat. Fat has 9 calories per gram, protein has 4 calories per gram. So the protein hardly ever is the problem. It's usually the fatty meats or the fatty cheese or the fatty things. Doesn't mean no fat, it just means be aware. So I definitely support this, what's called plate method, where somewhere in the neighborhood of half of your plate are vegetables. Remember, they have low carb, low calorie, no fat. And modest, little bit of protein. A quarter of your plate are your high carbohydrate foods like the potato and the, right, thank you. I totally drew a blank. And then the protein recommending here about a quarter of the volume of the plate. It doesn't have to be every plate, every meal, but if you assemble or proportion that way, your macros are kind of lined up just right. But let's go a little bit further. Don't forget, when you do eat the fruits and vegetables, you're getting fiber, and that gives you fullness. Protein gives you satiety. Fat gives you satiety, because fat makes the stomach empty more slowly. And the more slowly your stomach empties, the longer you feel, not full and uncomfortable, but like, oh, I had something to eat a while ago. As opposed to, I'm starving and I seem like I only ate, like half an hour ago. So fat has a good role, as does protein. And then carbohydrate is definitely for satisfaction. There we go. But let's talk, are macros sometimes problematic? And in this case, a high carbohydrate meal could actually be a problem for someone who has insulin resistance. So here is not the time to diagnose anybody with insulin resistance, but often that occurs when you have extra fat in your midsection. I'm hiding behind this podium. We'll keep talking. You've heard of the apple versus the pear. So the person who has the pear shape could be small-ish in the shoulders and the waist, but have very, significant hips and bottom. That person does not have insulin resistance, or very unlikely, very, 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 very. The person who has tiny little thighs that I envy, right? And a kind of a full-bodied upper half might be at risk for insulin resistance. And it mostly is based on a lot of things, but it's called intra-abdominal fat. So all of us have fat on the surface, like right under the skin. That's called subcutaneous. That's the stuff that keeps us warm. And as we mature, we have less subcutaneous fat and we get chilly more easily. Okay. But when the fat is actually inside the abdomen around the organs, that's intra-abdominal, and that is associated with insulin resistance. And if that's the case, it's a good idea to be very stingy with your carbohydrate. Treat carbohydrate like it's radioactive. It's not your friend. It's not zero, but not a big hunk of spaghetti. like that, not a giant base of rice and then some other things on top. Now, don't we all know tons of people who eat that all the time?
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean everybody's gonna walk out in the street and drop dead. But the clinical management of diabetes and other things does say, let's reel in the rice and the spaghetti and the bread a little bit at a time and see until we find the best medical profile for you. That's not everybody, but if it is, then carb is not your friend. Now, that plate method is perfect. Half veggies, 1/4 carb, 1/4 protein. And if you're gonna go run the marathon, work that spaghetti. If you're gonna go run the marathon. Then, what other macros should we be cautious about? So the flip side of that is very low carbohydrate meals, like people who eat like keto diets. Where they're only eating, I mean, they're eating like a bobcat, they're only eating meat all the time, meat and cheese. We're all in the generation, we remember the Atkins diet. So, like, no bread, no ketchup, 'cause that has sugar, and it does. No, what else? No rice, no corn, no veg. You can have 3 slices of tomato and then a big steak. So that doesn't sound like body friendly, and in a way, it isn't. But if someone has insulin resistance, that might be a more body friendly meal than the big pile of spaghetti. And if you have a low carbohydrate meal, it means that you're eating a lot of protein and a lot of fat. And we know that a lot of protein, so we said 35 to 70 per meal. Suppose you go crazy and you're eating 100 per meal. It's kind of hard, but it's doable. A lot of protein actually may make you lose calcium. So it's associated with loss of bone density. That doesn't mean if you eat steak, but if you eat nothing but steak and chicken all day and no carb, you probably need to introduce some carb to replace some of those dead animals. Okay. Any other macros to be aware of? Well, a high fat diet. So let's suppose you say, I'm only going to eat 1 piece of bread every, like, my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Excuse me. And I'm going to slather that bread with butter. Just keep thinking something totally silly. You are now eating a very high fat diet. Or we wander down to Broadway and we go into any of the delis and someone is coming out with a buttered roll with cheese and ham and bacon and fried egg. All right, that's a lot of fat. So you see what I mean? It's not that fat is bad, but it's kind of hot, what is on your plate. And it leads to what's called low-grade inflammation. So why is low-grade inflammation something to talk about? So low-grade inflammation will encourage the body to produce substances that will affect what are called the barriers. So skin is a barrier, the inside of your lungs is a barrier, the lining of your intestines is a barrier. All those things are barriers. You got to see, because they block things from just marching and climbing on you. Sorry. And I somehow thought that this illustration could give an idea of what happens when barriers break down. So, but it's a little more fussy than I would like. Here is a barrier. Well, let me just use these 2 pictures. You can see there's a barrier here that's broken and a barrier here that's broken, whereas over here the barrier is intact. And these could be barriers that are the barriers of the lining of the lungs, the lining of the intestines, and different regions of the intestines. And high fat diets, let's just imagine that you get all your meals at Five Guys. You been? You have any clue what Five Guys is?
I'm nervous.
And fries. and fried onion rings. I mean, it's like Fat City. And those fats you can be very comfortable that you're probably not gonna get food poisoning, because those fats are put at very high temperatures. So any salmonella doesn't stand a chance unless they undercook, but let's not go there. So I'm just trying to say, high-fat diets with all the processed meats and the extra spreads and the extra oils and the extra everything is not body friendly, because along the way, it can affect barriers, which then affect our overall health. Your intestines have a very specific barrier to not let bad things in, like your skin, like the blood-brain barrier that keeps things from going in the brain. Some things go in the brain, obviously, marijuana goes in the brain, but you don't want everything to go everywhere. So that's an attempt to explain why you don't want to eat crazy high-fat diets. Even if someone says, carb is terrible, you shouldn't eat carb, it's gonna make you sick. A high-fat diet is also down the road, not body friendly. Okay, enough of this negative stuff, let's get back to positive. Well, we do have these claims about fat burners. You heard those, right? It has nothing to do with macros, nothing to do with carbohydrate or fat or protein. But it says, can I eat something that's gonna make my body burn the body fat? I mean, like, go after the fat and burn it. And can I eat something that's gonna make my body burn calories faster? I wanna raise my metabolism. You've heard these phrases, right? Can I eat something that's gonna decrease my absorption of things so that I can eat it, but it doesn't get in me? And those products exist. I'm gonna do the absorption one first, because I didn't make a separate slide about it. There's a medicine as well as a product that can be used in foods called I did, the word suddenly dropped off from my brain. So orlistat is the drug, and the product that is a fat substitute can be used to cook French fries or potato chips. The word will come to me in a minute. It ends with OSE, but it's not a sugar. I'll come, so here's what happens, that you eat the potato chips that are cooked with this fat substitute. And when it gets into your intestines have all these enzymes that are saying, okay, come on, I'm ready for you. But they say, I don't know what you are. Just pass on by. And one of the early research outcomes was what was called leaky stool. Do you understand what leaky stool means? It's like you're sitting there minding your own business and all of a sudden, you leaking stool. Because your body doesn't break down, doesn't handle these fake fats. Well, they did fix that. So it's no longer a problem, but I think the consumers got wind of it and said, nah, I don't want to take a chance. So that while there was a big campaign to promote these fat-free potato chips that had they tasted in your mouth like a real chip, but they didn't have they were made with a fat substitute. So that's one thing. Have you watched one of those infomercials where they say, we took this ingredient from the seashells, that this shellfish, the shell part of the shellfish, and turned it into something that basically blocks fat absorption? Have you seen those infomercials? Good, you haven't. All right. Now, based on all the claims for conjugated linoleic acid, chromium, kelp, carnitine, and a bazillion others, the only two products that have evidence that they support helping your body burn fat are caffeine and green tea. Everybody likes coffee and tea? Oh, okay. But here's my next slide. I hope that slide wasn't too annoying. The caffeine was studied with exercising volunteers, not us sitting in this room. All right, these were young, healthy people who were at a fitness center working out, and they gave them coffee, and you can measure things in the urine as to what's being broken down. And when they had caffeine, they burned more fat than when they didn't have caffeine. But that doesn't mean if I double my daily coffee intake, I'm gonna burn more fat. It's something that's related to when you are rigorously working out. Yeah, okay. And then the green tea has the potential to increase fat metabolism at rest. Because remember, the caffeine study was done with exercising volunteers. But if at rest, which I hope you all are at the moment, the green tea might also do that as well as during exercise, and it may help lose body fat and therefore body weight. But like with caffeine, it appears to be a relatively small effect. So if you switch to green tea, 1 or 2 cups a day, I'm not sure it's gonna turn around and help you lose significant fat. It's healthy for many other things. I mean, green tea has a list from the ceiling to the floor of benefits. Okay.
So it has to be caffeinated. It can't be decaffeinated green tea.
Green tea has something else in it other than caffeine.
Oh,
Yes, it can be decaffeinated green tea, I'm pretty sure. Got me. Oh, you're good. That's 2. All right. High five. Right. The process of removing the caffeine, I don't know if it removes, the stuff in the green tea are called catechins. Sounds like kitty cats, right? Catechins? And I don't think the catechins are destroyed when it's decaffeinated, but I won't say that I know for sure. Well, and the last is the mechanism for the metabolic effects, which means what's going on inside, who knows, are really incompletely understood, and the practical application is also. But if you and I are approached by a business person who says, I have 12 tons of green tea, and we're gonna package it in cute little boxes with adorable little flowers and bows. I'm gonna sell those boxes for $19.99, which is $20. But if I said 20, it sounds too much, right?
Yeah.
And if you invest with me, we're gonna make a lot of money. And that's really kind of how it goes. It's not a dangerous product. It's just inflated in its promises. It's cute, right? And no, green tea ice cream is not gonna do it. I broke your heart, didn't I? Okay. Oh, it's delicious though. Next slide. Oops. Fat burners, green tea. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap here and say these are the tips for older adults. That's us. And I think I used this one in my last presentation, so I'm just ending with again a review. We lose muscle mass as we age, and we can offset that by doing resistance training. I would love to say I do it. I have the intentions of doing it every week. And it doesn't have to be crazy. You could take, if you still buy laundry and detergent in a bottle or a milk bottle, fill it with water and use that handle. And then just that's resistance training, right? There's lots of things on YouTube that are approved for older people, so we don't have injuries. Well, good. It took an hour with the first cough. Okay. Use lots of things you can do at home to keep your muscles engaged. Eat protein, 35 to 70 grams per meal. That's again a new recommendation because we're at risk for losing muscle mass. Now, I think the next set of slides we talked about earlier. Like, how do you know you're getting 35 grams at a meal? And then hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. So I'm drinking this water, not to prove a point, but because that's so I don't cough. We definitely have a thirst response that is part of our evolution. But as we mature, the thirst response is not as sensitive. So by the time you're thirsty, you're probably way under hydrated. So the recommendation is that you have a jug and you just keep sipping a little bit all the time. Okay. Outsmart your metabolism. This is not my words. The source is down there, WebMD. Eat 3 small meals and snacks and don't go much longer than 3 hours without eating. So your metabolism doesn't think you're fasting. Because when you're fasting, your body says, oh, we must be in a famine. And I want her to survive, so I'm just gonna slow everything down. We don't wanna have anything slow down, we wanna keep everything at the current rate or better. And then ask your doctor or a registered dietitian, I know one. Okay, and these are some exercises that you probably can modify. I think I've seen a YouTube video. These are called the 7 scientific workout. You do each of these for 30 seconds and then you take a 10-second break. So, jumping jacks. I won't be jumping jacks either, because my knees are saying that was from 1999 and before, not anymore, okay. But if you can do a modified jumping jack, okay? For 30 seconds, and then kind of push it when you're ready, take a 10-second break, and then a wall sit. This is a little recess, but it's harder than you think. For 30 seconds, take a break, push up, no, okay, you can wing it. Cheat, it's okay, you're on the floor, it's okay, you did the right thing, 30 seconds. Abdominal crunch for 30 seconds, it's not do 100 or do 50, it's just do as many as you want in 30 seconds and then take a 10-second break. This is called the step up onto a chair. The day I step up onto a chair. So, sorry. You might have a small stool. If you go to the thrift shop and you see one of those little baby stools for babies, as long as it can be anchored, because we don't want to fall. And step up and then step down again. Okay, a squat, and everybody will be very cautious to say, your fanny shouldn't go below your knees. But the idea is when you do that, you're stretching and you're building. These are things that are fun, easy, watching TV. Make a bet, do whatever you can do, modify it. As I said, this picture is a little more perfect, and I know we can do them with them being a little easier. And then I think that's my last slide. No. Pushing again the whole idea of plate method, that if you have 50% of your plate, some combination of veggies, 1/4 a high carbohydrate food, 1/4 a high protein food. More examples of that, and not necessarily kind of your TV dinner looking food. But here's a bento box if you're going out. Here is a bibimbap if you're going Korean. The whole idea is keep it interesting, keep it fun, keep the carb from being the dominant part of the meal, keep the protein well represented, and then have lots of those veggies. Right on time.
Do I have timing or what?
No, that and the what? And a bag of chips.
And we do have a few people online, so if anybody online also wants to ask a question. You were obviously very thorough.
Was that? Okay, good. All right, cool. Any other questions? I had some good questions in the class too.
Oh, good.
Well, I look forward to seeing everybody again. Yes.
I just, somebody told me that it's important to eat your protein first, then the veggies, then the carbs.
That's actually a recommended strategy if you have diabetes, because your blood sugar doesn't go up as fast. It goes up more slowly. So you eat your carbs last. Now, if you don't have diabetes and your blood sugar is normal and now my father-in-law, who was born here in New York, but of Jamaican parents, Jamaican and Barbados, meticulously put whatever was on the plate, he put a little bit of each thing on every fork. So a little string bean, a little rice, a little bit of chicken. And he, didn't he? Meticulously, every meal, I used to tease him. Cause here I am knocking down all the string beans and I'm rotating the plate, now I'm gonna eat all this, cause I like a child.
Are you
But-
back?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. So everybody can, I think that is also a good advice. It has been proven to be helpful for someone who doesn't want their blood sugar to spike. Eat the carbs last. But if you have normal digestion, do it your way.
Next month, Maudene is coming back and here, let me come to the front so people don't have to turn around. I can do that.
Excellent.
So, she is going to come because continuing, last time we were here, ask questions of what people want. And one of the questions that somebody said they were interested in is how to eat to curb sugar cravings.
Yes.
So, yeah, I like that. Yes, amen. Yes, please. So that's what we're having next month is how to deal, what to eat and what to do when you get those sugar cravings to start, dealing with that. So,
Thank
we'll
you,
be
guys.
back.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All
You're
right,
very welcome.
thanks for joining.
Thank
All right, take care.
Yes, love.